Hello everyone, so today we are going to do Leetcode weekly challenge first question. So the first question is always easy, but today I made this question at the last to do. Earlier I've already explained about the all mediums which were there. Now comes the part that how we are required to do this question. So in this question we are given with n cross n integer matrix grid, and now in this we are required to generate integer matrix max local of size n-2 into n-2 such that, so now this simply represents that whatsoever generated matrix would be, it would be of the size n-2 into n-2. That reflects that in this particular matrix which is being given to us, we are just required to traverse this particular length only, so that we could get our final answer to this much extent. Now comes the part that what are the next conditions which are given to us. So max local of ij is equal to the largest value of C cross C matrix in grid centered around I plus 1 and the column j plus 1. So this is about that the new generated matrix which would be, it should be centered around I plus 1 and j plus 1. So the thing is that here what we are required to do is, here we are just required to get, because it would be a 3 cross 3 matrix, right? So basically not that generated one, but the one in which we are required to check that which is the largest. So it says that max local ij, the new generated matrix which would be there, that should be equal to the largest value of 3 cross 3 matrix in the grid. So the grid which is being given to us means this one. In this we are required to just check for the 3 cross 3 at every time. So that's the thing it want to convey. So now in this part, so in this context, we are required to check for 3 cross 3 matrix in this particular whole grid every time, and that new generated matrix should be of n-2 into n-2 size, and in this 3 cross 3 matrix only we are required to figure out with the largest value. So now and that particular grid which is there in which we are required to check for 3 cross 3, that should be centered around the row I plus 1 and the column j plus 1. So this is the thing which we would be again checking in the same. Now the next thing is that, in other words, we want to find the largest value in every contiguous 3 cross 3 matrix in the grid. So we want to now figure out with the largest value in every contiguous 3 cross 3 matrix, and that is the whole context. We are required to go ahead with designing an algorithm, and we are required to return our generated matrix. So here in the first example, means all this context which is there, I can explain you from this first example itself. Now the thing is that we are given this particular grid, right? Or let me explain you another, because here I can't use that marker. So here what it want to say, that we will be checking for 3 cross 3 matrix, right? So here we are required to check for this row, then this row, and this row. Then out of this, what is the maximum we got? We got 9. Then out of this, what is the maximum we got? We got 6. And out of this, what is the maximum we got? 8, right? And now comes the part that the new generated matrix, that should be of n-2 into n-2 size, right? So what is the grid size here? So here grid size is 4 cross 4. So the new generated would be 2 into 2, right? So that, and moreover, how we are required to check for the largest one is by checking for 3 cross 3, which should be centered around row I plus 1 and j plus 1. So that is how we are required to check for each of what we say that means each of the 3 cross 3, that how it is centered. Means if we start from I equals to 1, right? So it should be centered around I plus 1 and j plus 1, because it is 3 cross 3. So it should be say if we start from I plus 1, if we start I equals to 1, right? So I plus 1 would be 2 and j plus 1. If that is also the case, means if we are at the starting moment only, then in that particular, our j would be also equals to 2, right? So if we say 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2 and 3, right? So at that particular moment, our 3 cross 3 which is being what we say that centered is at this particular point, means from the row, that is this particular row, and from the column this particular. So it would be centered at this point, and we would be required to check for this particular, and here we will check that what is the maximum out of this and that the thing which we are required to. So here the maximum is 6, and here the maximum is again 6, and here the maximum is 2. But you can also see that how this matrix is being generated. At the leftmost part is the only where we are encountering this 6. So there is something which we are required to check for the same. So now comes the part that if we start from I equals to 1, then this would be the criteria, right? So now let us see that how next we are required to proceed. So now according to that, now we are required to check that how we are required to proceed in the same. So the thing is that when we are given with this particular pink one, right, so its center will lie at this particular 6. So in our solution itself, we are required to, even if we start from the 1, right, still we are required to check that how we can go and check for the previous one and the next one, and how we are required to go ahead with the middle one. So according to that, we will modify our indexing. So if we check in general, so for this first one, our indexing is based, our middle one element is basically when I equals to 0 and j equal to 0. So our center basically lies at I equals to 1 and j equals to 1, right? And when I equals to 1 and j equals to 0 for this particular downward, then in that criteria, our center lies in 1, 2. And for I equals to 0 and j equals to 1, in this particular criteria, center lies in 2, 1. And for this down one, our center lies in 2, 1. Again, okay, I equals to 0 and then j equals to 1, basically this one. So here 2, 1 is there, and in this criteria 2, 2 is there basically, not the 1. Here 2, 2 is there. So now in this criteria, now the thing is that according to this only, as the center should lie there, and we are required to get the maximum out of them. So in this particular box, that whatever is the maximum we get, that should be our 9 here. Then in this particular box, whatever maximum we get, that should be here. And in this particular block, whatever maximum we get, which is 8 here, so we put here 8. And in this particular box, whatever maximum we get, that is 6 we got here, so we are putting that here. The thing is that we are required to just make n minus 2 into n minus 2. So that's why we will be going ahead in this manner, that we are able to make the n minus 2 into n minus 2 matrix as our answer, and the maximum which is required to get is through the 3 cross 3 thing. And for that only we are checking for this particular thing, that how these are there. So now comes the part that how we are required to code this particular solution, because when we start coding, then it would be much more clear. So this was the general overview that how we are required to proceed, which means we need to keep in mind about these things only, and then we will be able to code. Now here comes the part. So the thing is that this is for the part that our final answer, that this would be the matrix, which will be of the size n minus 2 and n minus 2, and at the starting we are initializing everything with 0, so that we could easily compare or even assign and even, so that this particular could act as a array and we could directly assign the values to it. Rather than pushing back, we could directly assign. So that's why we are initializing with 0. So now comes the part that we are starting from I and j equals to 1, and we will be going till n minus 2 and n minus 2. Even if we start from I equals to 1, now here we are required to go ahead with the indexing in such a manner that we are able to cover the first quarter also, the second one also, the third one also, and the fourth one also, which was there in our first example. So considering that example itself, now we are going at our maximum, we will be going ahead with this starting at int max only, and then now we will be checking for the first row. So in first row we are, because we are required to check for 3 cross 3 only, so in our first row we will check for our first column. So if it is centered at I, right? So our first row would be having I minus 1 and j minus 1. And now the part, because it is just above, so that's why I minus 1 and j would be at the center position. And then comes the part I minus 1 and j plus 1. Here I minus 1 is the row count which is just above, right? And then comes the next part, then we will be checking for this is the middle row which is there. And here we will be checking for j minus 1 which is there. And then j plus 1 which would be there. And then comes the part for the last row in our 3 cross 3. So for that we will be checking for I plus 1 and then j minus 1 as it is, means the column minus 1 column and then column plus 1. This is the thing how we are going, and out of all these we are taking out the whatever maximum we are getting. So at the end our answer at that particular moment will be the max which we have got till now. And then we will be proceeding further, means when I equals now for the j part we will be proceeding ahead, and like this only we would be able to figure out for the whole matrix which is given to us, and in each 3 cross 3 and the generated one would be n minus 2. So at the end we are required to return our answer matrix, basically this one which is there. So this was all about this particular question. So if there is any doubt about the same, you could comment it down. So thank you.